are losing children due to the guns and the carnage and the lawlessness unleashed by those states. Not only is it not normal, it is internationally embarrassing and delegitimizing to the United States.
Virtually every vehicle in the parking lot was a pickup truck, and almost every one had a rifle or a shotgun on the back glass and a pistol under the seat. And we didn't have school shootings.
AOC stood at the hearing and criticized American gun culture, describing it as an international embarrassment. She then turned her attention toward red states, arguing that places like Florida and Georgia should bear responsibility for the crime and violence affecting New York. But Congressman Higgins was ready to push back. Rather than accepting the argument at face value, he challenged her claims by pointing to the broader history of crime, public safety, and policy decisions in major American cities. His response shifted the conversation away from political talking points and toward the facts and history behind America's ongoing debate over crime and gun policy. And as Higgins laid out his case, the contrast between the two positions became impossible to miss. What followed was a tense exchange where Higgins made it clear he wasn't prepared to let sweeping accusations go unanswered.
I'm looking at your presented statement, sir. Say you support confiscating guns from individuals determined to be a threat to themselves or others. Determined to be. So by this legislation my colleagues are putting forth, my understanding of the letter of that law, which I 1,000% oppose, as would our founding fathers, the letter of that law is an anonymous tip from a citizen. So if this was law, Commissioner, would you go to your neighbor's home and confiscate his legally owned weapons, a man that was not under criminal investigation nor under arrest? Would you do it?
The red flag laws would...
That's a yes or no, brother. I got 5 minutes to make an hour-and-a-half statement here.
It's more than a yes or no answer.
We'll move on then. If you cannot say yes, you would confiscate weapons from an American citizen that was subject to this law that my colleagues intend to push through this Congress, then you said in your statement that you would confiscate those weapons if an American was determined to be, your quote, a threat to themselves or others. According to that law, determined to be is defined by an anonymous tip that an American citizen is a threat to themselves or others. You're a police commissioner, a thin blue line brother, sworn to uphold the Constitution, and you're saying you'd seize those weapons. I see that as a problem. I'm going to bring us back in time to World War II. America's population, 140 million. 15 million American men came home from World War II with deep scars and significant skills. They bore the invisible wounds of war. And there was weapons everywhere. We'll talk about mental challenge. My father was one of those men who was a Navy pilot in World War II. He came back from the war and built his family. I'm the seventh of his 8 children. I was born in 1961. We had guns everywhere. There was virtually no regulation. Any child in the 50s could buy a weapon from any seller if Daddy sent them with the money. We didn't have mass shootings. It wasn't until 1968 in America that serial numbers were even required on weapons sold in this country. You order weapons through the Sears catalog by the mail. In the 70s, I attended a high school, large rural school. Virtually every vehicle in the parking lot was a pickup truck, and almost every one had a rifle or a shotgun on the back glass and a pistol under the seat. And we didn't have school shootings. 1979, I began college. One of the jobs I had to work my way through college was as a carpenter. We restored historical buildings. We had to determine in the process of that work what was the original cuts of these homes, residential homes built 75, 85, 100 years ago. You could tell by the saw cut if it was a mechanical cut, an electric cut, or a hand cut. By such observations, we knew exactly how that house was originally built. And to my amazement, as a young man beginning college in Louisiana, working, to my amazement, you know what I discovered, Madam Chair? You know what these houses did not have that were built 100 years ago in cities in America? You know what they did not have, Commissioner? Locks. Locks. Now I ask you all, what happened to that country, man? A country where homes were built in cities with no locks. A country where guns were everywhere and virtually not regulated at all. Where millions of Americans, 14 million Americans came back. It's 11% of the population at the time after World War II, with incredible skills of war and weapons of war, as you called them, everywhere. But we didn't have mass shootings. And here we sit today, where an entire once proud Democratic Party is presenting unbelievably unconstitutional laws to press upon our nation, and we have a police commissioner that says he would go home to home and confiscate legally owned weapons if he got a tip. Madam Chair, I yield my speech, but I will not yield my opposition to these unconstitutional.
The moment Higgins began speaking, the direction of the hearing changed. He immediately challenged the arguments surrounding red flag laws and put the police commissioner on the spot. Higgins asked a direct question. Under such a law, could an anonymous tip from a citizen potentially trigger police action against a law-abiding gun owner, even without an arrest or traditional criminal investigation? The commissioner struggled to give a clear answer, and Higgins quickly pressed the issue. His argument was straightforward. Any law involving the seizure of legally owned firearms should raise serious questions about due process and constitutional protections. For Higgins, this wasn't simply a debate over public safety. It was a debate over where government authority should stop and individual rights should begin. Then Higgins shifted to history. He pointed to the millions of American servicemen who returned home after World War II with extensive military firearms training. He argued that firearms were far more visible and accessible in everyday American life during previous generations, yet the country experienced a very different social environment. He also shared personal memories from his youth in the 1970s, describing high school parking lots where rifles and shotguns could reportedly be seen in pickup trucks. His point was that the presence of firearms alone doesn't explain every modern problem involving violence. Higgins then offered another historical example from his younger days as a carpenter. While working on older American homes, he said he encountered houses built decades earlier that didn't even have modern locks on their doors. To him, that illustrated how dramatically American communities and social expectations had changed over time. And then came his central question: what happened to that country? Higgins argued that the biggest changes weren't necessarily the existence of firearms themselves, but changes in culture, family structures, community life, and social values. Whether or not viewers agree with his broader political conclusions, that was the foundation of his argument. He closed by making his position unmistakable. He would not support laws he believed violated constitutional protections, and he refused to back down from that position. The exchange ultimately became a larger debate about the Second Amendment, public safety, individual rights, and the role of government. Higgins came prepared to challenge the argument with history, personal experience, and constitutional principles, and he made sure his position was heard. If you believe the Second Amendment deserves serious protection, hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more political breakdowns. The debate over gun rights and government authority is far from over.